This time we are reviewing a model in 1:87 scale. And the model's in that scale because the real machine is so big. It is a Potain tower crane, and it's the huge MDT 809. And this is a crane with an 80-metre jib in real life. If we turn it around, we see that the model is made by Conrad, and for OEMs they are pretty much the go-to maker of tower crane models.
Let's weigh it up.
Onto the weighbridge it goes, and it comes in at 4 pounds 3 ounces, which is 1.91 kilograms. The packaging consists of a sleeve which covers a pair of expanded polystyrene trays, and as you can see there's also an instruction sheet. And we'll take a closer look at that in a moment. Thankfully there's no tape to have to cut, and you can see the Conrad brand name in the lid. When we open it up, we see that there are numerous parts to this model. And that gives the first clue that it's going to be big when it's fully assembled. The instruction sheet is very good with only a parts list missing. And there are nice pictures showing how you assemble the model in stages. And the stages are numbered so that the model is always in balance as you add the parts to the crane. Turning it over, and the sheet describes how to add the smaller parts, and gives you a basic reeving diagram. We start by assembling the tower, and the first thing to look at is the slewing ring. Now this is a really nicely made part and properly represents the real thing. 3 pieces of tower are included, and each one seems to represent 3 5-metre tower sections. And that's not really described in the detailing of the casting. The sections are joined by a new clipping system. This seems to work very well, and it's better than the tiny plastic pins used on other models. The joins are tight, and it produces an overall straight tower. And you can pretty much manipulate any slight lack of straightness. The base is formed of a couple of interlocking beams which make up the cruciform. And there's a little bit of detail to add, which includes a ladder and an access platform. Once you've done that, then you can clip the tower onto the base. But at this point the connection is a little bit loose and there's some movement of the tower on the base. But that gets significantly improved in the next stage. And that stage is to add the ballast weights. They are made with holes so the bottom pieces interlock onto the cruciform, and that makes the whole arrangement much more rigid. Let's now just add a piece on the opposite side and clip that into place. And by doing that, we find that the tower connection is much more rigid. Here is the first of the jib sections, and it's a box section. And you can see that the real crane actually has this in 3 separate pieces. So it is a compromise of the model that you can't split it down into the sections of the real crane. This will be secured by small plastic pins. So using the giant hand crane we lift it up to the slewing ring. And there we can rotate it into place and drop the section carefully in, and then secure it with the plastic pins. And the good thing is that the model remains stable even with this offset piece. Next we add on the counter jib, and again it's a fully fabricated section, whereas on the real crane it splits into parts, so you can't really use these pieces as transport loads on 1:87 scale truck models. After that we just need to follow the sequence shown in the instructions. And if we do that, the model always remains stable. Let's now take a look at some of the other parts that get fitted. And here is the machinery deck with the main winch. And that's quite a heavy metal part. At the counterweight end there's a couple of metal Potain signs to add. And the counterweight itself is a solid block. And that does mean that you can't sensibly pose the model in short jib configurations. So here's a quick look at the back end of the crane, and we're just demonstrating here how the Potain signs get clipped into place. Moving to the jib, and there's the trolley to add on. And this is mainly a plastic part, so it is flexible, so you can use that flexibility to clip it onto the jib. Another detailed part to add is the trolley winch motor, and it also has an access platform. That gets inserted into a holder on the jib, and once it's there it's a reasonably tight fit. There's also an access platform to fit above the slewing ring, and that just hangs on. And a nice touch is the lifting beam that clips on at the rear, and in real life that would be used for changing something on the main winch platform if you needed to. All cranes need a cab, and that's another part on the model which is nearly all in metal, and it also hangs on just above the slewing ring. And once it's in place it's firmly fixed and isn't going anywhere. The pulley block on this model is very good because it has proper stands for when the block is on the ground, and again it's an all metal part. To reeve it up you use a supplied key which goes into the winch motor, and then you can pull off some rope. But you can't be too energetic because that platform is just resting on the counter jib rather than being firmly clipped. So let's take a look at some of the detailing. The cruciform beams are well formed, and the counterweight blocks are painted to represent concrete. The lattice work of the tower is very good, and there are plastic access platforms and ladders. As we've seen, the modelling of the slewing ring is one of the best parts of the model, and the access platforms look the right size for the scale. The cab is also a convincing part. It has interior detailing including a seat, and the big window at the front has a windscreen wiper marked. The counter jib looks very detailed and convincing, and it includes a fine mesh walkway. The handrails are also metal. As we've mentioned, the main counterweight is a solid block, but at least it does look like separate slabs. The Potain name is rendered well, and given the scale of the model, the main machinery platform is also nicely modelled. Moving on to the main jib, and there are small metal pulleys used to guide the main hoist rope, and again the quality of the casting is very good. More fine mesh walkways run along the length of the jib, and the trolley looks convincing with its man-riding basket, as does the big hook, although the chains shown here are not included with the model. Overall the geometry of the model is very good, with just a slight curve on that very long jib. In terms of functionality, the crane rotates very well, and the smoothness is down to the quality of that slewing ring. If you want to position the trolley somewhere else on the jib, you can do that easily by moving the trolley. But as shown here, it's best to have some weight on the hook, and you can see that without it, the hook really adopts a sideways position.
Time for a dim check.
Even in 1:87 scale, this is a very big model, so let's do a dim check. And it's just under 2 feet tall, or about 60 centimetres. And if we start by measuring the jib length, we find it's about 37 inches or 93 centimetres, which scales up as an 80-metre jib. Fully end-to-end, the model is an impressive 49 inches or 125 centimetres. Conrad has a long history of making tower crane models. With a scale 80-metre jib, this is probably the biggest yet, and it's also solidly and robustly made in metal. Also, the detailing level is really good for the scale, and the only pity is that you're constrained to displaying it in its full configuration, rather than with shorter jib sizes. Overall, if you want a large modern tower crane model, this one is very good.